Hello, what is up? I'm here for another video. This is just more of like a chatty one. It's funny because the last time I filmed a video, it was piping hot, but now it's achingly cold. Well, not achingly cold. It's never really achingly cold in the Philippines, but cold enough for me to, wear a sweater. Let me show you the weather outside. So as you can see, it's pretty rainy. And there's my little catto. Hi. Just looking outside. Oop, okay. Alright, so today I wanted to talk about books that I DNF'd. Now, I didn't really know what DNF meant until early this year. I thought it meant something else, like do not... But some wise person on the interwebs told me that DNF meant did not finish. Now, I thought this would be an interesting video because I'm not the type of person to not finish a book. I'm stubborn enough to, pick up a book and finish it all the way through, no matter how long it takes, just so that I could finish it. It's just how I am as a reader. But there are very few exceptions, very few. So I thought I would go through them today just to, give a little context as to why these are my DNF books and why maybe they might reappear on my to-read pile in the future. So the first book, and I don't have a copy of this anymore, is none other than Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I've dabbled in some of DFW's books, and I like them. I liked Pale King. I loved This Is Water, like the shorter works of his. But there's just something about Infinite Jest that I feel like was intended to be difficult to read. Like, I feel like DFW wrote this to make us hate ourselves as readers, like to make you feel so dumb and just like you've regressed as a human being. I didn't like that. I didn't like that experience. Like, you have no idea how many times I've tried to finish this book. I think I bought the book around 2012 when we thought the world was ending. I started reading the book and immediately felt like I was in a labyrinth and I couldn't get out. Like, what is happening? I know there's a plot somewhere here. The copy that I bought even was just a ginormous blue book that was bigger than my Bible, that was bigger than my encyclopedia, and the font was like microscopic. It's as if the book doesn't really want to be read. I think anyone who says they've finished Infinite Jest is lying. Funny story about Infinite Jest. Back in college, I interned as an assistant to the vice chair of the literature department. Part of my tasks was to screen the incoming literature majors before their interview. And one of the questions that I thought of asking was, what is your favorite book? I mean, it's a harmless question. Like, anyone would be able to answer that, right? And someone there had the gall to say it was Infinite Jest. You could imagine my face. That's a lie. That's probably a lie. So is it a permanent DNF or a temporary DNF? For now, I guess I would say it's a permanent DNF because none of the fibers of my entire being has the desire to read the book anytime soon. But maybe, I don't know, I might be ambitious enough to try to read it again when I'm in my 50s. And bored, but definitely a permanent DNF as of today. So the next book that I wanted to talk about that I DNF'd very recently, not very recently, maybe last year, like late last year, is this book by Gonzalo Garcia. It's called We Are the End, and this had a very interesting premise, really good writing too. But I feel like I wasn't in the right headspace at that time. I think I still have my bookmark in here somewhere. Nope. Okay, I removed it. But I was nearly halfway through this book. I mean, I've been warned enough. The protagonist is very cynical and depressing and just has a very pessimistic way of viewing things. But the writing is good, and I guess the parts that lost me as well were when the character was talking about video games. I only play like a handful of video games, one of which is Pokemon. I played like nearly every Pokemon game, but I'm not a big video game player. Well, the universe doesn't excite me as much. It's similar to how I feel about fantasy, which I will get into later. When those elements started popping up, because it's part of the book, the protagonist is a video game designer or a writer. No, he's a video game writer, and his friend is a designer. And when he gets into the nitty-gritty of it, it just loses me. Again, back to the protagonist's psyche, I felt like those two things just weren't my jam. But if it's a temporary DNF or a permanent DNF, I would probably say it's a temporary DNF. DNF. I feel like this is a book that I'd enjoy if I just had the right mood for it. You know, I think I'm a bit of a mood reader, as many readers are. If you get me into the right mood again, then probably I would give it another shot. Oh, another fun fact about this book is that I found the author on Twitter like years ago. Like we met on Twitter. Not really met, but like we interacted on Twitter. And I ordered the book because I thought he was cute. What does that say about me? I don't know. Most of these books I don't have physical copies of anymore. One of them, and people might throw stones at me for this, is Dune by Frank Herbert. Now, this explains why I guess video game universes don't entice me as much. Fantasy and I have like a very love-hate relationship. There were a few fantasies that I've loved in my lifetime, like Ursula Le Guin, the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Is Harry Potter fantasy? It is, right? So those are the kinds of fantasy books that I've liked. And then the rest, I don't know. I feel like fantasy and I have yet to try again. You know, if we were like dating, I feel like we've had like 1 or 2 dates and it just didn't work out. So we have to try again maybe to see if there's something that could be salvageable there. But when I was reading Dune, I tried to read it because the movie was coming out and the love of my life was in it. Oscar Isaac, but I just couldn't get through it. I felt like I was overstimulated. I felt like there was just so much going on. I prefer books that really study a character or that have a plot, but not so much that I don't know what's happening anymore and I can't keep track of the things because I'm a savorer. And if I can't savor every single thing in a book because there's just so much happening, it's most likely that I will put the book down. I tried. My best friend gives me a lot of crap for not watching the latest films. I've tried, but I just couldn't. Screw me, right? But I did enjoy the Kyle MacLachlan film, like the 1980s campy rendition of Dune. I loved that. I finished that. My brother made me watch it and I really loved it. I don't know why I couldn't get through the latest films, but maybe it's a certain mood that I'm after. But I did love Arrival. Arrival is a different thing altogether, I guess, because it does focus solely on like 2 to 3 characters and 2 aliens. But Dune is just a whole universe. Like I don't have time to understand a whole universe. Is it a temporary DNF or a permanent DNF? That is the question, right? I guess for now, like right at this moment, like today, Kyla today, permanent DNF, but I'm gonna force myself to read this because I'm gonna use it for a future video, which I will not tell you about just yet. But yeah, there might be a chance that I'll try to read it again. I don't know about finishing it, but I will try to read it again. So both temporary, permanent DNF. Is that a paradox? Maybe, but both. So the next book is a book called Telegraph Avenue by Michael Chabon. Chabon? How do you pronounce his name? I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm very sorry if I butchered that. Telegraph Avenue, I had a copy of as well years ago. I bought the book at the time that it was raved about online, especially on Goodreads and amongst some of my reader friends. And I did also like the premise. You know, it was kind of like high fidelity. You know, it was appreciating music and older mediums of music and vinyl stores and all that. But there was a political aspect of it that just wasn't appealing to me. I felt like it was just boring to me. I didn't feel like I was attached to the atmosphere of the novel. I felt like maybe I was too young for it as well. And I thought at that time realism wasn't my thing. So it was a circumstantial DNF, I guess. But I also don't feel like I want to read it again because I remember very clearly that it was also a huge book. And right now, I'm at that point in my life where so many things are happening and I want to read books that I know I will like, that will give me something of value immediately. And I don't think I will get that from that book. Is that mean to say? Maybe. Again, I know people have enjoyed Telegraph Avenue. I do remember the writing being a little dry, a little dragging. Maybe it's because I also prefer female authors. Like, not because I'm a misandrist or anything, but because I prefer the voice of a woman when it comes to writing. It's just very emotive. It's very sensory in a way that many male written books aren't. So permanent DNF, most probably. And the last book on this list is something that people will probably give me flack for, is The Hunger Games, the very first Hunger Games book. Okay, I did not like the book. There was something about Katniss's voice as a protagonist that I didn't really appreciate at that time. But I do love the films. Like, I love the universe that it created. I love a dystopia. Katniss's voice just didn't resonate with me. Probably because I was so young. And this is a very political book, once again. I feel like the movies give the book so much life. I mean, I feel like the movies give it justice. Like, watching the films, I feel like I've gotten the essence of the book and what it's trying to say. There are a lot of things about Hunger Games that are relevant to us today. Is it a temporary DNF or a permanent DNF? I would probably have to say permanent DNF. Because again, I'm trying to cut down on my reading because I'm a slow reader. I call myself the slowest reader in all of Southeast Asia, and watching the films just is enough for me. And that's it for my DNFs. I do not wish to have any more DNFs because, as I said, I'm really picky right now about the books that I read because life is short. You know, you shouldn't be reading books you don't like. And I'll see you in my next video, if there is one.